great in all kinds of food, and it's great for keeping away vampires, of course, as well. So, and this garlic is starting to grow. So, which is, I think, a reminder for us that, garlic is a living thing. And that garlic, like all plants, like all seeds, like it wants to grow. It wants to become new, wants to become a new plant. And if you plant it, you'll have some more garlic. But I think that's just that hunger for life is good to see, and is a reminder too. For us, it's like there's so many of us that feel maybe we're like seeds in the ground right now, and we're not feeling like we got a lot of green going out. But just to say that the hunger is there, and that we have a God who ministers to us even when everything is asleep, when all the seeds are waiting for spring, that we have a God who is preparing us for new life. And certainly that is what he does, and what Jesus does for us. All right. I know that Mika is doing is in charge of kids. He's fine. Okay. Mateus is going to help out in the booth. Okay. All right. Sounds good. Or he's going to do he's going to find a box. Otherwise, that sounds good too. Perfect. We've been on our series looking through the book of John. He has 7 signs throughout his book, that point to Jesus as the Messiah, and they point to who Jesus came to be as the Messiah. What is his goal? What is his goal? What is the work that he is doing? And so today we're going to reflect on, this is the 4th of those 7 signs, where Jesus feeds the 5,000. So let's read that story together. Sometime after this, Jesus crossed to the far shore of the Sea of Galilee, that is, the Sea of Tiberias. And a great crowd of people followed him because they saw the signs he had performed by healing the sick. Then Jesus went up on a mountainside and sat down with his disciples. The Jewish Passover festival was near. When Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming toward him, he said to Philip, "Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?" He asked this only to test him, for he already had in mind what he was going to do. Philip answered him, "It would take more than half a year's wages to buy enough bread for each of these people to have just one bite." Another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. "Well, here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. But how far will they go among so many?" Jesus said, "Have the people sit down." There was plenty of grass in that place, and they sat down. About 5,000 men were there. Jesus then took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted, not just a bit. He did the same with the fish. When they had all had enough to eat, he said to his disciples, "Gather the pieces that are left over. Let nothing be wasted." So they gathered them and filled 12 baskets with the pieces of 5 barley loaves left over by those who'd eaten. After the people saw the sign Jesus performed, they began to say, "Well, surely this is the prophet who is to come into the world." And when Jesus saw that they were ready to force him to be their king, he slipped away into the hills by himself. The word of the Lord. People of God, running on empty. I think it is a common feeling these days for a lot of folks. And some kinds of empty are easy to fix, right? When the car is empty, well, we know where to go. When the fridge is empty, well, we live in a place where as long as you've got a little money in your wallet, you can just go to the grocery store and you'll be fine. You can get bananas, even in winter, from another part of the world. But for all kinds of other empty, the solution is much harder to resolve. Loneliness is rough. Not having people or community that know you, love you, and share life with you. There's grief and loss, exhaustion, carrying things so long that you stop having hope that there will be rest sometime soon. Running on empty, but you just have to keep going somehow. And of course, there's the larger picture you get watching the news cycle, that there is so much struggle in the world, in our cities, in our countries, and that the leadership we have in place always seems to be running to catch up. And that there's not enough money, not enough time, resources, patience, right, on the part of people, right? We're not always patient with our leaders either. That doesn't make it easier. And there's not always enough wisdom paired with the ability to make the right thing happen in the right way. Where do we go? There's no shortage of people and pundits and self-proclaimed prophets who forward their answers. Try this. Cut this out of your diet. Try this philosophy on instead of that one. Read this book. Listen to this podcast. Try this nutritional supplement. If you order it in the next 7 minutes, you qualify for our 2-for-1 discount. The reality is that this feeling of emptiness is nothing new. It is as old as the human race. And yes, there are things in this world God has made for us that genuinely refill our tank. As we talk about, God usually points us in that direction of those things. But we also spend a lot of time hungry and on the hunt for answers. In this series, we've been looking at 7 signs or miracles that John uses in his gospel to show who Jesus is. He wants us to know that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, God's Messiah, his anointed one. He wants us to understand what that means, and he wants us to believe and have life in his name. The miracle in our text is a famous one, a simple meal of barley, bread, and fish that some boy had brought for his lunch is turned into a full and satisfying meal for 5,000 people with 12 basketfuls of leftovers. Right? So Jesus gets this little plate, this little boy's lunch, and he says, here's some for you, and 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 some for you, right? 5,000 people eating their fill. Now, there are some clues in the text as to what is rolling around in people's heads as they receive this gift, this miracle, right? And so, first of all, it's during the Passover. So this is the festival where they remember God's rescue from Egypt and that he leads them out and feeds them through the desert, right? So it's all of this great story that's in the background of what's happening, right? So they see this sign. This is a great miracle. And so they say, well, surely this is the prophet who's to come into the world. And so, this is one of the things that Moses prophesied in Deuteronomy 18, was that God was going to send them a prophet. And God sent them a bunch of prophets, but it was always those things that were tied. There's going to be signs attached to that person to say that this is really God's prophet, the one who speaks his word, right? And so we see, right? And so they're seeing this sign and they're saying, God has sent us a prophet. But then we see a third sign is something we see later in chapter 6. As Jesus is explaining a lot of the imagery and the meaning of this miracle. And this is where he says, I am the bread of life. I am the bread come from heaven. And then he talks about the Passover connection, talking about himself like the Passover lamb and the bread, foreshadowing that Last Supper when his followers gather around a table to eat his body and drink his blood, right? He talks about that, interpreting what's happening here. But what's the simple message? God feeds his people. He gives them what they need. And he is going to fill their emptiness on all kinds of fronts to abundance through Jesus. 12 overflowing baskets, enough for, plenty for all the 12 tribes of Israel. For everyone who God is going to call, he is going to feed them. So, of course, the people could see this message, but how they received it was complicated. The people on that hillside listening to Jesus had come because, well, in part, they were there to listen to him, but they were also hungry. They were physically, their stomachs were empty. So they are physically empty and seeking bread. They are also spiritually empty and seeking God's help, his wisdom, his care and counsel, right? So they see a man who's doing miracles and they say a prophet, right? And so it's like, well, hey, we've been empty. We've had nothing new and powerful for a long time. Now we have a sign. And they've been politically empty and looking for someone to lead them. Right? Under Roman occupation, the enemies are in charge. These kings that we have running around, they're corrupt. They're only interested in their petty projects. We are the people that they push around, right? The religious leaders that we have, well, they are teachers of the law, but they don't have these signs. They are not true prophets of God, as Moses promised us. And so Jesus urges them to believe, right? To believe, to have faith. And it's just not just to fill their belly, right? Because that's part of when people were coming to him afterwards, and he says, it's like, well, this is why some of you are following me around. You just want to fill your bellies again. You just want me to give you some food. This is about way more than that. And Jesus also wants them to know that he shows them, hey, I am not a king or a prophet in their vision, right? And so one of the things that they did, right, when Jesus did his miracle, the people immediately saw him as a prophet, and they tried to make him king on the spot. They had all kinds of ideas. The prophet is here. We have our king. We make him our king. He overthrows the Romans. He gets rid of the Herods. He tells the religious leaders what's to do. We have our king. We have our Messiah. And they just said, he's going to be here and he's going to do what we want. And Jesus ran from that. I am not the king or the prophet in the way you want me to be right now. Right? And so Jesus also wants them to know then through his teaching that they should receive a new bread from God's hand that gives life to the world, and that's him. That he is the bread of life, what God has given. And as we understand the bread, the Bible, Jesus associates it with all kinds of things, like God's giving bread to his people, providing for them, feeding them. And that's giving them the law, giving them wisdom, giving them peace, joy, connection, new life with God, right? God feeding all of their hungers. God has come, he said, to fill their hunger and their emptiness. How is it supposed to play out? What does it mean? This is where it's really helpful to see, as Jesus himself, it's during Passover, and he talks about manna and bread from heaven, right? And it's just, the message of the manna, if we look back at how manna worked in the desert for people, what did it do? First of all, it met people's basic needs, right? And God's message, I will provide for you. I will give you what you need for today, right? You have a whole nation in the desert. They have no water. They have no food. God gives them exactly what they need every day. I will provide for you. But so what's the point? Well, it's so that you can learn to trust me and depend on me, so that when the time comes that you will really trust me when it counts. And that's when we get to the promised land. And I'm going to need you to step forward in faith and not backtrack, right? Like you did last time, right? But I want you to trust me. When Jesus says, I am the bread from heaven, he is God saying, I am providing for my people. I am showing them my law and my word, feeding them with it. It's like how God wants us to live in a way that does feed our hunger with all the good things, feed our desires with things that satisfy, right? Jesus shows us that way of life, and it's part of being in a church community is we're learning the things that are healthy and good. It's like, this is what Jesus taught us, and he taught us this because it's better, and it actually helps us. And it does help. It helps us to repair relationships that break. It helps us to pick ourselves up when we fall. It helps us to show grace to each other and forgive each other. Right? And so Jesus is saying, come and eat. Receive this gift. Learn from me. I am the bread from heaven given for you. And he points to the table, right? In later in chapter 6. And he says, he goes straight from I am the bread of life, and he says, I am manna, I am the bread from heaven, and then he moves to I am, the bread to break. That whoever eats my flesh, drinks my blood, whoever remains, they remain in me, and I in them. We are fed. We are connected. We are fed by God. Remain in me. Come and be fed. Let me feed you. Let me teach you. Come to this table. Let me show you how to live in a way that will fill you. And let me save you. I am the bread from heaven. Stay with me. Let me give you what you really need. I am your prophet. I am your priest and your king. But I am in God's vision those things. So let me lead. Let me serve you. Receive these gifts that I give you to truly refresh you. Jesus' words in that last passage, right? He's asking people to remain in me, right? It's like, well, it's that points us towards that trust and connection. And that's where Jesus uses the same word, remain in me, the same expression when he talks about the passage of that he is the vine, we are the branches, right? It's that staying and connected, right? The branches constantly feed off the vine. They feed off it. They get their water, they get their nutrients from the vine. If you break the branch off, it dies. And isn't that how faith is? So many of us find ourselves in those places where we feel empty and hungry, and we listen to a passage like this where Jesus talks about feeding people to abundance, and many of us are like, but I know Jesus and I still feel empty. Where is the bread of life? Why am I so hungry? And of course, we know that God does sometimes take people into desert places, into long, dark nights where he is trying to teach us something, to challenge us, to wean us off of our lies and the fake bread that we feed ourselves. So that is one possibility, right? Where it's just like, I'm feeling totally disconnected. But here's another. I know a bunch of years ago, I found myself in one of those empty places. Sad, angry. I'd been in a hard place with my church. I was carrying a lot of pain and grief. I was feeling really, really discouraged. And so I sought some help with a Christian counselor. And he helped me sit and listen and pray. And in one of those moments, he asked me to close my eyes. And he asked me for an image of where I think God is. Where is Jesus? And I had one clear as day. I saw Jesus on the other side of a closed door. And he was there waiting and knocking and calling for me to answer. But I had been keeping the door closed. And I don't know entirely why, right? In my anger and my pain, I huddled up inside, stayed in my room with my door locked. But in that guided space with a brother in the faith, I was able to go and open the door to Jesus again. And I was flooded with peace. People of God, Jesus is the Messiah. He is God's bread come down to feed an empty world. He wants us to trust him, not just for a full belly, but to follow him and live life his way. The only way we can thrive and stay strong on that road is if we continue to trust him, that we regularly come to him and are fed, refreshed in his love and in his spirit. This is how we remain in him, clinging to our source of life. So our invitation is simple. Jesus is here. Come and eat. Let him feed you. Receive his simple gift and follow his lead. Now, Hannah, you and I have had a little bit of a conversation already this morning about, my unpredictability and that I tend to change things on the go, all of that kind of stuff. So I've got 2 thumbs up from so I have a different song on my heart. And I'm wondering if we can sing it together, even a cappella. You can find words for when peace like a river. I think it is in our hymnals. If 519 in our hymnals. Oh, okay. It is well with my soul. That's good. I think we got it. We got her.